Hello, hello, this is Rod. Live within your means. This is a note, a 5 Bolivar note that I've got here on the screen. And the person on this note is actually Jose Felix. Jose Felix was one of the people that fought for the independence of Venezuela from Spain many, many years ago. And you'll notice that there's quite a few different 5 Bolivar notes over time. This is actually one that I think they sell it for, you can buy it online for $14.50. This is one from 1989. And back a while ago, 5 Bolivars could actually uh, do you a lot of good. Now, it could, according to, and I'm going to show you some things here, but according to someone that I spoke with who actually went to Venezuela to meet and pick up his wife, and this is Josh Holt, who was actually a little bit infamous because he went to Venezuela and he was jailed. He was actually framed. They brought a bunch of the police down there. There's a lot of corruption. They planted a bunch of weapons in his apartment and arrested him. And what a nightmare for his family. He was in jail, a very poor jail. And you can actually look that up separately if you want to see the horrible circumstances that he was in when he was framed. He was just going down to meet his fiancée and this gal that he married, and really went through a horrific time. Nevertheless, I contacted them and I was able to speak with him the other day to see what 5 Bolivars once purchased. And what his wife Tammy told me is, and I'm just going to go over here to the notes that I took. So in 1989, she says 5 Bolivars could pay for food and clothing, or for a family of 4. That's supposed to say 4, a family of 3. There we go, for 3 months. And she said by 1998, that would pay for food for one person for 3 months. By 2007, she said it could only buy a bag of Doritos or a movie ticket. And in 2016, she said $1 was 800 bolivars. In other words, it would take 800 bolivars to be $1 in 2016. And then now they said in 2020, $1 is equivalent to 5.5 billion bolivars. Now, this note can be quite valuable to you because you can learn what's happened to the people in Venezuela. Now, they haven't kept very good statistics. They certainly don't want to publish their statistics well. But Bloomberg actually did something. They were trying to show what a cup of coffee with milk, Venezuela Café con Leche Index. And they said that back, look at this. This was a year ago today. In February of, actually it says January 30th on there, but about the same time of year, 1 year ago, it was 1,700 bolivars for a cup of coffee with milk. The prices of everything have skyrocketed because the bolivars have become so worthless. And about this time now, January 29th was just 3 days ago, it was 75,000 bolivars for a cup of coffee with milk. Let's put a little bit of milk in your coffee, which is pretty phenomenal. Look here, Venezuela, the things that they've gone through over the last number of years, their bolivars have changed over and over. They've gone up in, they've printed more and more zeros on them, then they've taken those off. They called one of their bolivars the Sovereign Bolivar BSS, and I guess a lot of people might think, well, that's, it's not worth a whole lot more than BS. And then they did their Bolivar Fuerte and took a bunch of zeros off. I know that this Bolivar, they had removed a whole bunch of zeros to bring it back to 5 bolivars. But as many of us are aware, and all the people in Venezuela are aware, It's just been depreciating as they print up more money to pay off their debts. They've had a lot of problems down there, and it's really been a nightmare for the people since Nicolas Maduro came into power. Before him was a man named Hugo Chavez, and Hugo Chavez, he promised the people a lot of things. They had a lot of oil. They were taking in a lot of money from oil. He started telling the people that if they elected him, he was going to give them free health care. He was going to make things better for them, even by making sure that prices were cheaper. Well, they could subsidize things all they want, but when they're subsidizing anything government does, they are having to take actions that require administration. They require every law that's passed, someone has to be there to enforce those laws and deal with all those things, which means government is going to spend more and more and more money. And as they do, they have to pay for it. If they're paying for things, the value of their money, when they're printing money out, depreciates more and more and more. This is some exchange rates over time that these are some published ones. How accurate they are is questionable. But this is for one. Let's see, one point. I guess it's going from the BS notes to the BSS notes to the BFF notes, and look at that. I don't know, 5,000 to 6,000 for 60 to 90. I'm a little bit uncertain of this, and but as you can see, these numbers grew and grew. But let's jump over here and see what has caused some of these problems. I'm going to jump over here to, this is a place in Wikipedia that talks about the crisis in Venezuela. Well, the crisis, there are lots of things that are part of this. From the Chavez presidency to the Maduro presidency, they had similar policies that just got worse and worse, where government was promising to do things for people. And as the government would subsidize things, the corruption in the government became worse and worse. And just like back with Joshua Holt, excuse me, he experienced the corruption of government when he was arrested for things that he had nothing to do with, jailed for 2 years. The poverty among the people is just horrendous, and the shortages of food and water. When you start subsidizing things and taking over grocery chains, because the Venezuelan government thought that some of the grocery stores were hoarding things, and so they nationalized the grocery stores. Nestle and some other companies had warehouses. They confiscated the warehouses and said that they needed to build public housing. You can imagine if you're in business and you're producing goods or services, and all of a sudden the government just says that something you own is theirs, it's going to take away your incentive to be producing things to make a profit, because your profit could be taken from you. And needless to say, just like in a lot of socialist and communist countries, there are shortages of food and other supplies. Maybe some of you have heard about the problems with the lack of toilet paper, food, everything else. Healthcare that they were going to make free, the quality and availability of healthcare has just gone down and down and down. The medical supplies are almost non-existent for a lot of the medical professionals down there. It's really been a nightmare, to be honest with you. The human rights violations are unbelievable, and as a result, the United States and other countries they have put sanctions in place against the government of Venezuela. And infections and preventable diseases have gone up unbelievably. If you look at this here, let's see if this will pull up here, where they used to have malaria cases back in 2010, maybe 60,000 cases of malaria. All of a sudden that's gone up. This back in 2016, that's 4 years ago, to over 300,000 cases of malaria. It's just, it's pretty unbelievable. So let's look at some of the rest of this. And but the Venezuela has actually become one of the most dangerous countries in the world. There's many news sources that have said that it's one of the most dangerous countries in the world. There's housing shortages. Remember, the government was going to provide lots of subsidized housing. Well, they've certainly built some housing, but there's all kinds of housing shortages. Crime is through the roof. And the crime goes from people that are trying to get something to eat, things that they need, that their family needs, to government officials that have been appointed that are, of questionable character, doing things that are illegal, lying, committing all kinds of crimes for bribes. And the immigration out of the country is incredible too. And in fact, they have thousands of people leaving the country every single day because they need health care, they need a place to live, they need jobs, they need food. And from what I had been reading, over 10% of the population of Venezuela have left the country. The country is really just in shambles. And this is the kind of thing that happens when governments start printing up money to pay off their debts. One of the things I read said that the Venezuelan government has always paid all of their foreign debt obligations. Well, when you create your own money and you can start adding zeros and you owe other countries billions of dollars and you start printing up bills with more and more zeros, you can just pay them off. Well, this is the same kind of thing that can happen in the United States. It hasn't happened up to this point. We hope it's not going to happen. I'm a citizen of the United States. I'm American or U.S. citizen, and we don't want to see these things happening here. But this corruption, it is spreading around the world. The governments that are in debt, they're printing up money, and they're having inflation not as badly as they have it down in Venezuela right now, but the inflation is increasing all around the world. In the United States, they try to tell us we only have 2% inflation, but those of us that are paying our bills, we know that we're like these people here. We're paying more and more. Certainly, we haven't seen the types of inflation that they have here. The inflation that they have down in Venezuela has actually gone from, and maybe I should jump over to a site that I have called Live Within Your Means, that there's actually a warning to the world here that I've put up talking about the inflation that I saw in Brazil, inflation that I taught about that happened after the Germans, they were ordered to make war reparations after World War I, and their German mark in 1915 might have been around maybe 40 or 50 marks to the dollar, so around 2 cents. By 1923, after they'd been ordered to pay war reparations and they were paying those, their German marks had actually devalued to the point that there were over 1 billion German marks to the dollar. And the inflation in Venezuela, I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger so we can see this here on the Live Within Your Means site. But in Venezuela, let's see, the inflation had actually in 2014 had reached 69%. That was the highest in the world at that time. A year later in 2015, it had reached 181%, almost 3 times what it was. Then it went up to 800%, several times it was in 2016, up to 4,000. Can you tell they were printing more and more money? By 2017, up to 4,000% inflation. That means prices were typically around 40 times what they were before. And then finally over, if you can imagine, inflation over 1 million% in 2018. And it was estimated by the end of 2019 to reach 10 million%. The Venezuelan bolivars, you cannot buy a whole lot with them, but what you can do is make other people aware of the problems that are happening not only in Venezuela but around the world by governments creating money. And we need to learn to live within our means so that we can elect officials who are also living within their means. When we get U.S. senators that are buying great big homes and short selling them, and then news stations that local news stations that won't even cover what they've done, it's horrendous. And to think that we have leaders that are living that way, if you can imagine a U.S. senator living in a home that's nearly 10,000 square feet that they buy for $1.6 million and then saying that they can't pay for it, even though they're making $200,000 a year as a U.S. senator. And I'm not going to say that senator's name right now, but I just think it's appalling that people that are not living within their means can be making decisions for the rest of us that are paying taxes. So this is Rod. Live within your means. I encourage y'all to live within your means. This site has some very simple things on it. Livewithinyourmeans.com tells you how to buy cars with cash. And if you can believe this, I've been driving nearly 40 years and I've spent less than $40,000 on all the cars that I've owned and registered in my lifetime in nearly 40 years worth of driving. So I've got some simple things on the site, the simplest things that you can do to save an awful lot of money and be able to live within your means. This is Rod. Live within your means. Have a wonderful day.